you sure that you know who's accessing your network remotely? COVID-19 has created a significant demand for remote access to systems and networks. I'm going to share 3 best practices for validating remote access to networks by employees. Howdy cyber heroes, welcome back to my channel. I'm Boyd Cluess and I'm an author, international speaker, and cybersecurity expert that helps IT professionals transform their experience into a 6-figure career without a laundry list of IT certs. For the best cybersecurity tips and career strategies, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post a new video every Wednesday. Now, before we jump into the nitty-gritty details, I figured I would baseline exactly what I mean when I say validating access. Now, if I have a username and password to access a system or application, and I give that information to someone else, or if a hacker were to discover it, there would really be no way to validate that I didn't use that username and password. So when I say validation, I mean tying a username and password or some login credential to a specific individual so that we have confidence that it's truly that person, that employee that's logging into a system. Now that that's out the way, let's jump into the first tip. Let's go. The first tip would be implement multi-factor authentication. Sometimes this could be referred to as two-factor authentication or even called MFA. And what this means is it's combining multiple password factors because there's actually 3. There's something that you know, which would be a username and a password. There's something that you have, which could be a token, some type of smart card, and then there's something that you are, which could be a retina scan, fingerprint, something to that nature. When you combine multi-factor authentication, that gives a company, the security team, greater confidence that the person using those credentials is indeed the correct person. And so what you could do for remote access is you could use a tool like Duo Security, which is a popular multi-factor authentication solution. You could also use Microsoft Azure to do multi-factor authentication. These tools can be combined with smartphones to send push notifications to an individual when they attempt to log onto a system. They can make phone calls or even send text messages. This is a great way to ensure that authorized personnel are the only ones accessing your applications. Because without this second factor, whether it's a smartphone or a token, access would be denied. Hey, what MFA solutions have you used before? Which ones do you like? Drop me a comment and let me know. Here's tip number 2. It's actually a 2-parter. You could implement time-based restrictions as well as system-based restrictions. And what I mean by this, let's say that you have a business unit and their work hours are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can actually implement some type of access control that only allows their username, password, those credentials to grant them access only during those business hours. And what this does is it will reduce the likelihood of those credentials being used outside of those business hours to access information that shouldn't be accessed, or if an attacker were to get those credentials and try to launch some attack after hours, right? Also, you could limit, which you should do this anyway, limit what systems this particular user's accounts can access. These things can be accomplished using built-in features with Microsoft Active Directory. If you're in a Windows environment, tools are already built in to do time-based restrictions as well as system-based restrictions, which will give you further control over those users that are accessing your network remotely. And here's tip number 3. You need to implement audit logging for user access to these systems and remote networks. If you come to my channel or if you hear me give a talk somewhere, you hear me talk a lot about audit logging because it's so important. Without logs, you can't correlate events. There's no attribution to individuals and the actions that they've taken. So what your team needs to do is configure systems to generate logs and preferably send those logs off to some type of aggregation point, a syslog server, a SIM feature that will generate events, notifications to the security team, the access control team, so they can take action if events are noticed that shouldn't happen. This is very critical because it doesn't matter if you have the strongest access controls in the world. If something gets compromised and you have no way of figuring out how it happened, it's all for nothing. So you got to make sure that you get the systems configured to send logs, and those logs need to be reviewed, and alerts should be generated from any type of adverse events. Now, these logs, again, they need to be customized by the security team with input from the application developers or system developers, because those guys that built the systems, they should know what the IOCs look like, the indicators of compromise. So once you have that information combined with multi-factor authentication, time-based restrictions, logging, you'll be good to go to identify who's logging into your systems. Now it's me, so you know I had to give you a bonus, right? Here's bonus tip, tip number 4. Now, depending on the size and the complexity of your organization, one thing that you could further implement to aid in this identification process is implement a geo-block. And what I mean is a geographic network block. Let's say that your company only does business in the United States and all of your employees live in the US. Well, block every other country from being able to log into those systems and networks. Now, what you can do is you could go use a resource that will give you IP addresses that are assigned to different countries. And with this information, you could use a web application firewall, a network firewall, or some type of network security appliance to restrict geolocations to allow users to access your networks remotely, which could further aid in the security of your systems and help prevent compromises. If you got value from this video, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to be notified when I post a new video every Wednesday. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Bye.